NBC News reports that anti-aircraft missiles were launched from Syria into Israeli-controlled territory early on Friday, following a series of Israeli airstrikes inside Syria. The Israeli military said its warplanes struck several targets in Syria and were back in Israeli-controlled airspace when several anti-aircraft missiles were launched from Syria toward the Israeli jets. Israeli aerial defense systems intercepted one of the missiles, the army said, but did not elaborate. It would not say whether any other missiles struck Israeli-held territory, but it said the safety of Israeli civilians and the safety of the Israeli aircraft were not compromised.
Well, the general command of the Syrian army claimed he shot down an Israeli fighter jet or a warplane, as well as a drone, either late Monday night or into Tuesday morning, so essentially overnight. I spoke with the Israeli military spokespeople, and they deny that anything ever happened, calling it a completely false report, a complete fabrication, and complete lies. They say, however, that 2 Syrian surface-to-air missiles were fired at their aircraft that were flying in that area, and this is right on the fence, essentially, on the line between the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights and the Syrian Golan Heights. So what were Israeli planes doing in that vicinity to begin with? Well, the IDF says, the Israeli military says that there were projectiles, weaponry or fire that came over from the Syrian Golan into the Israeli Golan overnight, and Israeli warplanes or fighter jets were responding, were retaliating against the targets, against the military that fired those projectiles, which is the Syrian army, according to the Israeli military. So it's these Israeli warplanes, these fighter jets that were flying in that area, which is the area of Quneitra, right across the fence, essentially very close to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The Syrian army says they shot down those aircraft, while the Israeli military denies that claim, saying that although they were fired upon by Syrian surface-to-air missiles, none of their aircraft, which includes fighter jets, warplanes, and drones, were ever in any danger, completely denying the Syrian military reports. Max?
And the Israelis have been targeting that area recently in response to fighting going on in the Golan Heights or around it.
Yes, from what we see, it seems there's an increase of fighting there on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights between what would be the Syrian army, the Syrian military, and between Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, which used to be called al-Nusra. That was a branch of al-Qaeda that operated there. There's been a tremendous amount of fighting there between the Syrian army and the rebels there over the past few months, perhaps even over the past year. That fighting, it seems, has intensified in recent weeks, especially last week. We saw projectiles cross from Syria into Israeli-occupied territory 3 times, as well as once overnight, an indication that there is increased fighting there. Whenever those projectiles cross from the Syrian side into the Israeli-occupied side, the Israelis carry out a response strike, a retaliatory strike, and that's what happened overnight. That is the genesis, essentially, of the Syrian army claim that they shot down the Israeli fighter jet and the Israeli drone, a claim, again, that the Israelis say is completely false.